Firstly, allow us to warmly introduce the Minister of Arts and Culture to introduce our keynote speaker this evening. Please offer him a roaring round of applause, specifically from the back, Minister Nathi Mthethwa.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. That's much better. His Excellency the President of the Republic, President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, the leadership of BBC, members of the diplomatic corps, ladies and gentlemen. I was about to complain, Mr. President, because everyone, when they came here, people understood from the background that there must be a note. It was quiet when I came here, only when I was here. They've missed out because I was going to get down and show the creative side of things. But thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. The person who's being introduced here and now is the President of the Republic of South Africa, the Commander-in-Chief of the nation, South Africa. I'm talking serious stuff here, not telephone booth toy stuff. It's serious stuff. President Ramaphosa is known for his foresight and compassion. He has touched all the national aspects and facets of our lives, the national lives of South Africa, whether talking about him as a leader of the workers, the militant mine workers, or broadly as a leader of labor, whether talking of him as a leader of the governing party. There was a time when he decided to leave the business of politics and join the politics of business. And he's back. It's full circle. We are, ladies and gentlemen, today, especially for BBC, honored that the President is here. Because the talk has always been at BBC, transformation, economic transformation. And that talk is not communicated to a stranger, because we're talking about someone here who led the way as the first chairperson of the Commission of Black Economic Empowerment. So she's at home. I mean, he's at home. Allow me to invite His Excellency President Ramaphosa to come and talk to the nation. A round of applause, please. I know it can be better than that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let's be seated, please. Thank you, Program Director. The leadership of the Black Business Council, Your Excellencies, ambassadors, and high commissioners who are here. And I heard there was a lot of excitement when the ambassador of Venezuela, Cuba, and Russia were mentioned. leaders of political parties who are here. I saw my most favorite general, General Holomisa, who's here as well. I used to be his Secretary General. And he continues to call me Secretary General, or SG. And then he left and went elsewhere. Minister Nathi Mthethwa. I haven't seen other ministers, directors generals, and representatives and leaders of various business organizations who are here. I saw some as I entered. And of course, the sponsors of this event, a wonderful galaxy of sponsors, including government entities, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. It is always a great honor, truth be told, for me to attend the gathering of the Black Business Council. Since its formation, the Black Business Council has truly been motivated by an abiding conviction that the people of this country should share in the wealth of the nation, in typical and true form of what the Freedom Charter said. Underpinning all its activities and its various pronouncements is a very clear determination to fundamentally transform the economy of our country. And to a large extent also to express its own understanding of our economy. There are times when I think that as South Africans, we don't fully understand the economy of our country, how it functions, and also its history, how it came to be the type of economy that it is. And sometimes I have a sense that we don't even understand what drives this economy. But I must say that quite often when listening to the leadership of the BBC, the BMF, one gets a sense that, yes, there's a keen understanding of the economy of our country. So I would applaud the leadership of the BBC in your various articulations, as you have demonstrated that you do indeed understand our economy and also how it should be transformed. In the end, the BBC is much more than just a voice of black business. It is the voice of a nation that continues to want to free itself from the bondage of discrimination and of dispossession, but also from the poverty and unemployment, and also from extreme inequality and a grave injustice that was visited upon our people when colonialists descended on our country and the apartheid rulers took power and started a whole-scale process of oppression and discrimination. We are here this evening to affirm our shared desire and underline shared desire to forge a new economy, and underline new economy, in which all South Africans have a meaningful stake and can play meaningfully, and in which all have equal opportunity and from which all the people of our country can benefit, as was foreseen by our forebears when they drafted the Freedom Charter. This is a monumental task that we have to embark upon, but we also would be embarking upon it at a time of great uncertainty in the world and in the world economy as well. The COVID pandemic has disrupted our lives in many, many ways, disrupted our livelihoods as well, disrupted production, trade, investment across the world and across our own continent, Africa, and indeed here in our own country as well. The devastating effects of the pandemic are being worsened by the impact of climate change on our communities and indeed on our economy as well. Most recently, the conflict in the Ukraine has added to these challenges, driving up fuel and food prices and intensifying geopolitical tensions. And now, even today, we begin to feel the effects of rising prices, the cost of living going up, getting the central bank to respond by raising the cost of money and the cost of debt. And this will have a particularly damaging impact on African and developing countries which are most vulnerable to food and energy insecurity. The other day, the African Union Bureau sat and discussed this whole process of what's happening between Russia and the Ukraine. And we realized that it is going to have an impact on our own continent as well. It was then decided that, yes, the chair of our union should go on invitation to Russia to go and meet with the president of Russia and have a discussion. These circumstances that we are confronted with as the world now will have lasting consequences for the organization of work, for patterns of trade, for investment flows, and the development aspirations of countries on our continent and elsewhere in the global south. But while there are great challenges, there are also great opportunities. The African Continental Free Trade Area came into operation in the midst of the pandemic, yet it is the most potent instrument that the continent has ever had to drive economic and social renaissance. And this is what we need to capitalize on and utilize. If we could ever have a great opportunity of being able, particularly South Africa, we've often said that we are the gateway into the continent, and in many ways we are. But we are the industrial powerhouse of this continent. And the coming into force of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area means that we are boosted. We, as South Africans, our economic fortunes can be put on a much higher pedestal. Because it has the potential, if we seize the opportunity, to foster industrialization, and we have been deindustrializing. And this is where, if we fully understand our economy and what has been happening to our economy over a number of years. Since the financial crisis of 2008, this economy has been growing at a very paltry level. We hit 5% or so around 2005, 6, and 7, and when we were hit by that financial crisis, it was downhill. And that's exactly where we have been. We've been seeking to create jobs on an ongoing basis. We've barely been creating 300,000 jobs a year. And the job entrants, those who get into the job market, have been coming in at 500,000, 750,000 every year. And no wonder we have such a high unemployment rate today. It's largely because of the structure of our economy and that we've been deindustrializing over the various years. And if we have a keen understanding of how our economy functions and we put our heads together, then we can begin to turn the tide around. Now, the AFCTA gives us an opportunity, yes, to capitalize on the infrastructure needs, not only of our country, but of the continent. The intra-Africa trade that must ensue following our entry into the AFCTA gives us a leg up, as they say, because new industries can be spawned, new opportunities come to the fore. Africa's response to COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated what can be achieved when African countries work together towards the achievement of a common goal. Initiatives like the Africa Medicines Supplies Platform, which we set up. When COVID hit us as a continent, we started scouring around the world for masks, which we didn't make, for these sprays, what do we call them? Sanitizer, which we didn't make. The PPEs. Now, let me tell you about the strength of collaboration. Because during this period of COVID, we proved that integration on our continent can work, and collaboration can be a powerful weapon. So COVID hits, 1.3 billion people on our continent don't have easy access to masks. We don't have easy access to sanitizers, and we started running around. Now, we as South Africa had just been elected to become chair of the AU. We had just been elected, and we had set a clear program that we want the empowerment of women, we want this, we want that. Those were our programs. COVID comes, and we had to ditch all that and focus just on COVID. And we realized that the continent does not have easy access to PPEs. We mobilized the entire continent and said, we need to set up what we called the Africa Medical Supplies Platform. Because as countries, wherever we went to buy masks, to buy sanitizers, the prices kept going up and up and up. You'd go to Europe, you would go to China, you would go to Japan, the prices kept going up. And we said the only great weapon we've got is to work together, to collaborate, and we set up a medicine supply platform. A young African young woman in Senegal helped to set up the IT platform or the software platform don't know what the actual terms are, but she set up the platform which enabled us to now go around the world and say, we have set up this platform and we are now going to procure collectively as Africa for masks, for sanitizers and all that. And we phoned some of the leading countries. I personally phoned President Xi Jinping and said, we want your companies now to start selling to us through this platform. We phoned a number of others, and the platform was set up. The continent started buying from it. But the other opportunity that came is that South African companies started making masks, started making all these other equipments, and started selling through that platform. Up to date hereof, our companies have sold up to 5 billion rand worth of PPEs through that platform, which shows the collaboration. But we went beyond that. As the continent, we're the only continent in the world that developed a COVID strategy for the entire continent. When vaccines became available, we decided to set up the Africa Vaccines Acquisition Task Team, where we would buy vaccines as a collective. Now, all that started showing that integration on our continent can work. Why am I saying all this? I'm saying all this to demonstrate to you all as business people that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is that platform of integration. We have proven that we can integrate, and when we integrate, we are able to be a powerful and a great powerhouse from an economic point of view. And it is this that we would like our business people in South Africa to be alive to, because South Africa is the powerhouse of the continent. We've now set up the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and it becomes a channel through which we are able to trade. And trade and investment should be the order of the day. And it is through this that black businesses can now leapfrog and begin to trade effectively with the rest of the continent, where you've got 1.3 billion customers. And all this has demonstrated that indeed we can leap up to the development of our continent. We can also move to manufacturing our vaccines, which is exactly what we've done, we've started doing, and we can demonstrate our capabilities. Now, like other countries on the continent, international developments weigh heavily on the performance of our economy. At the same time, we are confronting several domestic challenges, some of which are the legacy of our own apartheid past. Other challenges are the result of state capture, and others are a result of governance failures, where we ourselves have made mistakes, and yet others arise from the effects of COVID-19. The others result from the July unrest that we had last year, and the recent floods in KZN and the Eastern Cape have added to some of the challenges that we have to address. For more than a quarter of a century, we have worked together with yourselves as BBC, a number of other black business organizations, I can name BMF, NAFCOC, and many others. We have worked together to build an economy that should serve the people of South Africa. And in the course of doing so, we have registered progress. It isn't true that we have nothing to show after 28 years. It is not true. It cannot be true. A gona nnete moo. Ke le botša nnete e feletseng, o ka se eme mo o bo o re after 28 years, a gona se bonagalang. A se nnete, ke a gana. I refuse. Mema Kubela Unaemimo, she was standing here, and she was proudly saying, proudly so, saying that a mighty company like Anglo-American has women in the top leadership of that company. From the chairperson, yeah, Anglo-American in South Africa is a woman. The person who is leading the iron ore extraction, the biggest in the whole country, is a woman. And a black woman, and an African woman for that matter. I promise you, okay, let me come to the other one. Platinum is being led by a woman, white woman, because our democracy has also empowered the white women of our country who were also oppressed. It is also empowering the black women and African women in our country. That was never envisaged. Ke rile Oppenheimer mo a robetseng teng, o na sa nagane gore company ya gagwe e tla ba le batho ba basadi who are leading it. And you can therefore not stand here and say there's nothing to show. A gona nnete moo. You could also not stand here and say we have nothing to show. Today, 28 million, almost 30 million South Africans who would have been relegated to poverty, abject poverty, today have a social welfare dispensation that supports people who apartheid and colonialism had relegated to total continuous poverty. And we cannot come here and say the 4 million houses that have been built by this government don't exist. It cannot be. A gona nnete moo. Moo ke a gana. And I will refuse. I will refuse because today we have a coal company, the third largest in the world, that is black-owned and black-led. It is extracting and exporting coal. And this was enabled, yes, Mrs. Makubela was saying so. This was enabled by the policies of this government. This government has enabled that to be the case. Of course, we want many more, but we cannot stand here and say we have nothing to show. Today, our universities, the majority of children who are in our universities, even the so-called white universities, previous white universities, Wits, Pretoria, UCT, Stellenbosch, you name them. The majority of young people who are there are black children. So you cannot come and stand here and say we have nothing to show. We have a lot to show, because that is the transformation that has ensued. We have expanded access to skills. We have expanded access to opportunities by black people. Black people today have greater opportunities. We have used instruments like the preferential procurement employment equity, and broad-based black economic empowerment to begin to correct the huge distortions in our economy. Yes, I was the chairman of the Black Economic Empowerment Commission. And when we crafted that report, we envisaged that we should ensure that black people do gain entry into the economy. And then we started looking at varieties of levels, the equity part, the management part, and the procurement, and so forth. Now, all these things are happening. Now, when one stands here and says the cup is empty, it is not true. You rather say the cup is half full. You can't come and stand here, Ubori, hey, kapi empty, ahona nixi mo kapung eo. When you yourself have been enabled, you must get to where you are by this very government. So, in the end, President wa BBC ubulezi. Le nna ke a bolela bjano. Now I am also talking. Now, once we've both spoken, because this is what we should have done, we will go and sit in a corner, somewhere, drink a cup of tea, hug each other, and then say, okay, let's stop playing to the gallery. Let's deal with the real issues. I say so because there is a lot to be done. What we need to do is to focus on how we can work together rather than be throwing stones at each other. You throw a stone at me, it injures my eye, and now you make me blind. I can't see anymore. So, President wa BBC uri no, I must go home. Kita sepela le yena e gae. So what is important is to realize that, and this is what I say, Ori, we need to understand the history of our own country. We also need to understand the moment that we are in. And I'll touch on some of those issues about the moment that we are in and the challenges that this moment where our country is gives rise to, and how we should respond and what we should do to this moment. Because once we say things are falling apart and so forth, it means that you are abdicating your own responsibility. Because if things are falling apart, you must be saying, I want to help to put those things together. Tumami, nah, that's what it must be. Now, this is now where we now need to be saying to ourselves, yes, much as there's been the progress, and the cup is half full, it's not half empty, nor is it empty. We now need to be asking ourselves, how do we fill this cup? Because what we know is that we are on the same side. We are playing for the same team, all of us. We now need to say, how do we fill this cup? And as we work to rebuild our economy, in the midst of the most severe global pandemic in more than a century, we have a shared responsibility to address the challenge of unemployment, eliminate poverty, reduce inequality, and accelerate empowerment and deepen transformation. And of course, the government will make mistakes. The government will move slowly. The government will possibly implement wrong policy. Sometimes it will not implement what it has said it will do. Our task is to say, government, come along. Let's keep moving. Let's work together because we have a shared responsibility. And in the end, our immediate task is to grow our economy and create jobs. Now, I've just said, on the job side, this economy has not been producing the sufficient number of jobs since 2008. And we need to ask, we must first have an understanding why that is so. And thereafter, we must then say, what do we do to create these jobs? Our every effort at this moment must be directed towards placing our economy on a new trajectory and ensuring that there is inclusive growth and there is principally employment creation. Over the last decade, we have seen the detrimental effect of slow economic growth and what it has done to job creation, what it has not done in terms of reducing poverty and enhancing transformation. We also saw how state capture weakened state capacity. By far, one of the greatest blows that state capture did was in weakening our public institutions, as well as weakening our state-owned enterprises. And these were also weakened through private company interests. Billions were looted from state entities, and the capacity of the state was steadily eroded, and in some cases even destroyed. A number of companies and individuals in the private sector were complicit in acts of corruption, overcharging, as well as collusion. We must never lose sight of that. The era of capture was also associated with illicit financial outflows. It was also associated with tax evasion and other financial crimes. And some of our compatriots in business participated in all this as well. And what we would like to hear BBC and other black organizations saying, to be vocal about this, so that it should not be the Cyril Ramaphosa's alone or people in government alone talking about this. We need to be vocal. Because if we are not vocal, and the companies were named, if we are not vocal, some other companies or the same companies may just want to do it over and over again. Rebuilding our country is a collective effort. And over a decade, our economy was bludgeoned, our state-owned enterprises were bludgeoned, and state capacity, inside the government itself, we were bludgeoned and weakened over this period. But it also had, and I want you to listen to this also, it also had the cause of black economic empowerment and the advancement of black professionals. That's what it did. Because some of our black professionals saw short-term interest and went in with the flow. And only much later did they realize that they were being sucked into a process that was corrupt, that was weakening black economic empowerment, and that was also weakening the state. And in doing so, there was further impoverishment of the whole process of black economic empowerment. We need to ensure that the actions of those who were involved in all those things, do not further undermine black economic empowerment or hold transformation back. We must not allow a climate where empowerment is viewed with suspicion, where it is harder for black-owned businesses, for instance, to go and raise finance or struggle to transact with the government. We must resist the calls. We must refuse those calls, the calls to abandon our transformative economic policies and to defer the task of broad-based economic empowerment. Now, more than at any other time in our history, we need to undertake the task of empowerment with greater intensity and with greater purpose in the face of resistance and those who use a new weapon. Now, the new weapon that is being used is the courts of law. We call it lawfare. They are waging war against transformation. They are waging war against progress for black people. Now, collectively, we must sit down rather than throw stones at one another. We must sit down and say, President, ministers, this is the way, the war that is being waged against us. How do we counter this? Rather than stand here on public platforms and attack the very entity that you want to help you. How do you do that? Now, black economic empowerment needs a business environment in which companies can grow and thrive, where they can find new markets, develop new products, and employ more people. It is therefore quite significant. And you know, where we say nothing has changed in 28 years, listen to this. Now, I call an investment conference every year in our effort to raise this 1.2 trillion rand. Yeah? At this year's conference, the most significant part which I held on to and want to see more of it is that a number of black-owned companies came forward and pledged 36 billion themselves and say, President, we are going to invest 36 billion. Now, of course, I want to see that going to 500 billion. But it is going to come. Who did it come from? It came from black industrialists, people who make things, people who are not the middle people. They make things, they manufacture things, they are on the rise, and they are coming, and they are going to come in their large numbers, and government is going to support them. Now, empowerment obviously requires an infrastructure that is robust and reliable, and a network industries that are efficient and competitive. And that is where you are going to find government supportive and supporting those businesses. These are the roads that must connect emerging farmers to markets. The other day I read a wonderful report written by somebody who is completely independent. President of BBC speaks about land. And this person says, just in the 1 year past, the year of COVID, government introduced a program that has benefited 10,000 farmers. And he says, we went and researched it. We saw it for ourselves. Government gave them vouchers. And they took those vouchers, they went and bought seeds, fertilizers, implements. And he writes that that has freed up 294,000 hectares of land. Black people are farming. Black people are producing food. And this year we are going to do 200 approach. That should be approached rather than, yes, no, we are going to tell you truth to power. You are not a bystander. You are a fellow traveler. You must come into the scrum and work with us. Because you can't say, you must get in and say, I want to work to make this country work. It is a collective responsibility. Government cannot do it alone. Colleagues, I want to stress this. I'm stressing it because I want to keep coming to the BBC summit. I want to keep coming. So I get a president who will say, is going to tell the truth. He used some wonderful fancy words. Lynn, no, that's exactly what I'm doing. So in the end, because this is a collective process, we must all get involved in making sure that we change and transform this country. Where we find that things are not moving ahead as satisfactorily as they should, we must make every effort ourselves to make sure that it happens. Now, we are in the process of doing a whole range of things, be it electricity, be it promoting black industrialists, be it access to broadband, be it helping startups and so forth. Now, through the Vulindlela operation in government, we are working on structural reforms. And some of those structural reforms are meant to enhance the growth and development of black business. And these include policy reforms that will improve efficiencies in a number of places, in a number of sectors of our economy. And we are working to revitalize the various areas, be it rail infrastructure and all that. And all these things are areas that are receiving priority, be it in the water sector, be it in